22 Celsius somewhere around London. Any showers that develop in the south soon fade away as Wednesday comes to a close, and then during the early hours of Thursday, clear spells for a time, but there'll be further areas of low cloud mist, hill fog, coastal fog creeping back in. So again, a frost-free but gloomy start to Thursday. There will be some sunshine around, particularly towards the north and the east. And where we've got the areas of cloud, well, they'll start to lift and break up as well. I think we'll keep some coastal fog around the Irish Sea coast as well as the south coast. But inland, with brighter skies, temperatures will respond well, up to the low 20s in places. Good Friday's also a fine day for many. A few showers around, but it will also be a little warmer in places.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good evening and welcome to Headliners. It's Tuesday night. Very shortly, Josh, Scott and myself will be taking you through tomorrow morning's newspapers. But first, here's Polly with the news.
Good evening. Our top story tonight. The Chancellor has paid his fine for breaching lockdown rules and issued an unreserved apology. That comes after the Prime Minister and his wife also paid their fines and apologised. Police say the fixed penalty notices to Mr and Mrs Johnson relate to a gathering in the Cabinet Room at number 10 Downing Street on the Prime Minister's birthday in June 2020. Boris Johnson says he won't be resigning over the revelations.
I want to be able to get on and deliver the mandate that I have, but also to tackle the problems that the country must face right now, and to make sure that we get on with delivering for the people of this country. That is my priority.
Boris Johnson speaking about his fine earlier on today. Well, to the United States now, and President Biden says he's grateful for the emergency services and to the civilians who didn't hesitate to help when a gunman set off a smoke bomb and shot 10 people on a subway train in New York. And a warning, the following television pictures may be upsetting for viewers watching GB News on TV. 16 people were injured in the incident, which happened during the morning commute at the 36th Street station in Sunset Park in Brooklyn, New York. The whereabouts of the perpetrator are still not known. He's described a black male, and it's unclear where he is. Police are saying they are not treating the incident as terrorism-related. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, President Zelensky has proposed a swap of Vladimir Putin's closest ally for Ukrainian prisoners of war. It comes after Ukraine's security services arrested pro-Russian politician Viktor Medvedchuk, leader of the opposition Platform Party. Medvedchuk faces charges of treason. He denies any wrongdoing. Here in the UK, 3 victims of grooming gangs in Rochdale have received substantial damages and an apology from Greater Manchester Police. Chief Constable Stephen Watson apologised for failings when the women were raped and abused by gangs of men as children. Police failed to record crimes, to investigate offenders, collect intelligence or charge and prosecute abusers. It happened under previous Chief Constables, including Sir Peter Fahey and his predecessor. And Prince Charles is calling on us all to buy certified ocean-friendly products when we do our food shopping. In a speech to the Our Ocean Conference, the Prince of Wales warned the current threat to sea life is dire, and the future King says we need to tackle the problem of plastic pollution on a massive scale and fast-track the transition to sustainable energies to combat climate change. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, with GB News. Time now for Headliners.
Hello, welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. My first guest is brilliantly clever, honest, utterly engaging and absolutely fearless, according to the Scotsman, and a man the Daily Mirror said is evil and should be forced to leave the country. That is Josh Howie and Scott Capurro. Take them in whichever order you fit. If the hat fits. How are you, gentlemen?
Good, mate, yeah.
Excellent. You feeling well?
Yeah, right.
Have you done your usual social media little round before you come on? There's
I've
always
been
a
on
quick
it all
selfie.
day,
Yeah?
struggling to communicate with people.
Have you?
Yeah.
Reaching out,
Doing my
building
best.
our audience one by one.
Yeah, you know, I want to find them. They're out there somewhere.
How about you, Josh? You've been social media.
I just feel weird with the selfies thing. I still can't do this. I feel
I'm always lurking in the background, looking like a headmaster who's walked into a classroom that's misbehaving and doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah, I need to get better.
Ah, dear, this is our generation. Anyway, let's take a look at tomorrow's front pages. We start with the Daily Mail. Don't they know there's a war on? I think that was from Dad's Army, although it may well have been a catchphrase from the Second World War. This is, of course, Boris, Carrie, and the Met's £50 fines for Partygate. We will be investigating the honourability or not of that. The next one we have is the Daily Telegraph. People have the right to expect better. That is Boris Johnson's own assessment of his mischievous meanderings from the straight and narrow. And after the Chancellor's recent woes, this is the icing on the cake. The Independent have a picture of number 10 Downing Street, scene of the crime. Johnson becomes first sitting Prime Minister to break the law as Met Police fine him, his wife and Sunak for lockdown party at 10 Downing Street. The Guardian says, PM, I broke my own law, but I refuse to go. And an Andy Warhol article in the Banner. Financial Times, very similar take. Fines for breach of COVID law pile pressure on Johnson and Sunak. Is that pressure they can withstand? Led by liars and lawbreakers. That is the Mirror's unambiguous judgment on the situation. The Times say Johnson refuses to quit over lockdown party fine. And the Sun is our final one for this evening. I'm sorry, but I have work to do. So all pretty much going with the same story there. Let's dive into it. So we start with the dominant story of the day: fines, Scott. Fines.
I'm very well. Yeah, it took a while to find the fine. £50, not very much, is it? Is he paying that 12 times because there's 12 penalties they were examining, wasn't it?
Right.
Even that £600, I think he can afford it. But anyway, he has apologized, given a full apology, confirmed he paid the penalty charge, and he won't even discuss the idea of withdrawing from office. He says he has a job to do, he has a manifesto to complete.
Yeah, he's got to take this country lower That's what he wants to.
Yeah,
I have to say, I mean, just as devil's advocate, I was annoyed about this, but as time has passed, it feels, and of course that was the tactic.
Yeah.
It does feel rather trivial now, doesn't it, with everything that's happening in the world?
It doesn't feel trivial to me at all. In fact, I think it's a very cold night at the number 10 bedroom because the wife has to pay the fine as well, and that means less wallpaper for her. But I think a lot of people
saying she's the Jada Pinkett Smith of Downing Street.
One raised eyebrow and his career is over. I think also a lot of people feel like don't change who's in office now. We're almost at war. There's a disaster at Brexit. We need to. But Britain has changed prime minister in wartime before. I think they can do it.
They did, but that's because it was failing on the war, not because he had a party.
And we're not actually at war at all.
And Chamberlain died of cancer before the end of that year as well.
So what I'm saying is, then it's a milder case this time. Then we can fire him and move on.
I've got this feeling. I mean, I think it was a significant misjudgment. But £50 fines. I know the Mirror are going, he's like the first prime minister to break the law on the job. I mean, we all know that there are prime ministers who have committed worse crimes. Let's be honest about it. But maybe not being caught and fined. But a £50 fine, that is literally less than it's at minimum £100 if you just break the speeding limit.
Yeah,
like even on a smart
when other people were getting £8,000 fines.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just paid more for smoking weed in a hotel room in Berlin. So I think that was just yesterday. I think he needs to really be punished for this.
Yeah. Well, it does minimise it. Do you feel the fines are too low? Or do you
yeah, the fines are too low. The two things that I would add to the plethora of discussion going on. Number one is it a coincidence? I don't want to get too conspiracy-laden, but Rishi Sunak, suddenly all this stuff is leaked about him, taking him seemingly for the moment out of the running, and then suddenly they announce the fine.
It's not a coincidence, no. They're briefing against each other. I think that's fair.
Yeah, but to get that in, the timing of it is like perfect. Suddenly he was like going to be the alternative, so they could go, all right, we've got someone who's pretty popular we could jump to. Now he's not as popular, and he can release it, and that keeps him back in the...
So you think there's a third party who are playing them off against each other?
No, I think that they knew the fines were coming, Boris. Yeah. They released all that stuff about Rishi Sunak, and then immediately on the back end of it,
by comparison,
we can't have him, so we might as well stay with Boris.
Toby Young made quite a good point earlier, which is entirely within his particular perspective on things, which is to do with lockdown and COVID. But I think there was some truth to it. This was on an earlier show on GBNews, where I was talking to Mark Stein. He said that the great thing about Boris is now this has humiliated him over the unreasonable limitations he put on everybody else's liberty. Lockdown has been essentially demonstrated to not have been a good policy anyway. There is still always the threat from there's a certain kind of mindset that would just love us to go back into lockdown and close the schools down again and again.
They're still saying now.
But under Boris, he can't do that because he broke the law himself. He broke the law himself. Whereas if you get rid of Boris, you bring in somebody like Jeremy Hunt, before you know it, you'll have another raft of lockdowns.
And a higher suicide rate because he's such a monster. I think that Boris, in his defense, though, was making so many excuses about his behavior, saying, well, these were events I had to attend, they were brief, and I was doing other things. I had so many meetings going on. I didn't know where I was. There was so. It sounds as if like we're breaking up with him a little bit, like it's a relationship ending, and he's begging us to stay.
It reminds me, I mean, having drawn the comparison already with speeding fines, it feels to me like he needs to go on a party awareness course.
Well, this is
so that he knows when he's seeing one, maybe go to smart parties. And
well, this is the thing. It seems like the police are actually investigating one party at a time.
Yeah.
Right.
So they've only got to June 2010.
Yes.
There are more fines to come.
2020.
Yeah. I'd like
2020. Yeah, the parties don't go far about that back. Thank you. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. Maybe he'll get away with this one, but as more fines come out,
he's going to make it to the end of the road now. He's detached his act.
Yeah, but he's like you say, but it's all those excuses. Oh, it was less than 10 minutes. I was a surprise party. When it's like him hanging out and doing karaoke, there's less excuses.
Every word out of his mouth is a lie. We're so used to it now that people just want to be like, oh, God, he's
lying. Boris.
Well. It's a depressing situation when the leader of the opposition can't say in plain English what a woman is, and the Prime Minister can't say in plain English what a party is.
Here you are redirecting just the way Boris does.
No, but we have... No, I said they're equally bad.
And those two things go together so well.
They do.
They are, exactly. It does suggest that we're less than 5 years old.
One's a bit confused, one's not confused.
Now, when you get there, you'll know when you're at the party, because there'll be jelly and ice cream. And if you want to speak to the lady, she's the tall one. Anyway, we go now to much less amusing events in Brooklyn, Josh. This is rather alarming.
Yeah, so on the subway, this is reported in The Independent, but other papers obviously have it. And Brooklyn subway, there was a shooting. 16 people have been shot Amazingly, none of them seem like they will die, which is great news.
Yeah.
Might have something to do, supposedly he put on a gas mask and let off a gas canister, so I'm assuming that affected his visual
Sighting,
impairment
yeah.
as well.
He's just spraying bullets around.
Just spraying bullets. So, but I mean, as is always the way, you have looking at what the politicians are saying and how they sort of try to make some sense of it, but they always sound ridiculous. So the mayor, Eric Adams, has vowed to not let New Yorkers be terrorised. And they said, well, they are going to be terrorised. You know, you can't say that after the fact.
No.
And then you've got the governor, Kathy Hochul, who is saying that says the tranquility and normalness was disrupted by an individual so cold-hearted and depraved at heart that they had no caring about the individuals that they assaulted. Like it would have made a massive difference if they'd loved the person they assaulted. It's all good.
It probably would have been a better shot if they liked them.
It sounds like an odd one, though, doesn't it? He's sprayed these bullets around. He's disappeared into the crowd. He hasn't cried out any
political
slogans that suggest alliance with any political. I don't know. And yet, it doesn't quite feel like the classic. You know, psychopath.
The classic American, just big shoot 'em up thing.
There's bits missing from this. It just
already they're releasing ideas that he's a copycat or larger conspiracies at work in New York. I mean, we don't see any signs of that, but it could be happening. So
the first thing I saw, and you've got to be careful of this now, haven't you? On Twitter, for about 3 hours, there were unexploded devices were found. There were no unexploded devices. This was a complete fantasy.
Yeah.
No. And this stuff spreads very quickly, and then people do get terrorised. I mean, that is stuff that really worries people.
And the subway in New York is already. You know, I was just there. It's quite unsafe. You don't feel. There's a lot of people living down there.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're getting in the way. You're walking through people's living rooms. Seriously.
It's better than it used to be, though, right? It had its bad days in the 80s and the 90s. I think it got cleaned up a bit from then. There was a time when it was really grim, right?
Yeah.
Am I right? I don't know.
It feels pretty grim
that
now.
Was
it feels
the broken windows.
The trains don't feel like they're running on time. It feels like the money isn't being invested in it.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. I mean, even in London now, all these big cities post-lockdown are not quite the same as they were before. I think New York's got that same slightly kind of unreal quality. I mean, not as
although in Berlin, you can use your Wi-Fi.
Wednesday's Telegraph now. This is more Tory woes, Scott.
Yes.
Woes.
It appears as though a Tory person has made a comment in favor of the Extinction Rebellion and set off, sound waves within his own party, saying, how could he support?
He's a known eco-nut, though, isn't he, Ben?
Well, I don't know if you call him an eco-nut, but he is in support of ecological processes. Well, Ben Goldsmith, he's from a very famous, very wealthy family, and he said that he is in support of Extinction Rebellion and protests himself against oil refineries. He's concerned about the future of the UK and the world, and he said it's not really a good look, is it, to be supporting policies that diminish UK's standing in the environmental world. There's a lot of money to be made.
Which policies are those?
Well, what he's in support of with Extinction Rebellion, exactly, is that they do. They're pushing environmental movements by doing public displays.
Oh, I know what Extinction Rebellion is.
They stop
traffic. He's saying, Ben Goldsmith, he's a member of the Tory party, but he's unhappy with their direction?
Well, he's actually trying to criticise Labour because Labour was saying, we need to stop these guys. And he's going, hey, that's not a good look, Labour. These guys have a point. Which is, okay, we know that there's a point there, but when it's affecting ordinary people's lives, when you had those footage, people trying to get to hospital and they couldn't get through, people trying to visit dying relatives or whatever. I mean,
partly it distresses people who have somewhere to get in a hurry, and that's seriously bad.
That's usually what
it is. But also,
I
I think it seriously damages the ecology movement, which, joking aside, obviously I do have a lot of sympathy with. Because it makes it look as if it's represented by a bunch of cranks, very sort of passive, weedy, the sort of people who glue themselves to things.
Well, they do glue themselves
because they're too lazy to do anything.
It's a really bad look for the environmental movement, isn't it? It's like what you want is...
They bring a lot of notoriety to the movement, but not very much popularity.
No.
And they do a lot of, guerrilla gardening, and they do, like I said, puppetry shows, and they try to
dance around cabbages and broccoli.
They do, and they try to not stop traffic too much. And it's a difficult situation for them also, because they're potent, but they have very little funding. And their opinion is they are not eco-fascists, as they've been labelled by some Tory members.
I would like to see eco-fascists. That would bring a bit of zing to the situation. I think they're proper.
But, and they do try to bring zing. They do try to stop people and make them think. When you say traffic, I know the thing about getting in hospitals is difficult, but they do try to disrupt people's lives and let them see what a real disruption could be like if really the environment falls apart, is what they're trying to do.
I don't know. I think a lot of them, I mean, certainly a lot of the leaders have very dodgy political beliefs and whatever. They are extremists. Some of them are extremists.
I don't feel that way about them. I feel like they could be doing actually more, if you ask me. I think that situations like what's happening in the Ukraine right now is a perfect example of how dependent we are on, fossil fuels and how we need to remove ourselves from that. So
yeah, but the question is it an effective way of advancing that agenda, or does it make?
Have you got another one? Because it's the only one I see that's getting any press right now, and maybe it's getting press because people like
Freeview. There's an awful lot of conversations being had by people who do
conversations.
No, and actual action.
Is there very little activity? I think
wind power has advanced massively. None of it is being advanced by these Nazi hippies.
I see they're not Nazis, and you look more like a Nazi than they do right now, actually. And I see what's happening is a lot of European money is going toward funding a war that the Russians are doing in the Ukraine, not the other way around. And that's really paying Russia for oil and fuel, because what people are worried about right now, let me finish, is that it will cost, say, Europeans in the EU, not here so much, $2,000 a day if we remove Russian gas. Yeah, but okay, how much is it going to cost us for a war that's going to explode within 3 years? I mean, he's not going to stop. I don't see why people think he's going to end what he's doing. He's doing pretty well right now.
Okay.
I
don't detach from the original story.
But no, I don't think we have. I think they're connected.
Wednesday's Mail, and following in the tragic death of Sir David Amess, there are musings that a cornerstone of British democracy may have to change, Joss.
Yes, so the
surgeries, is it?
Yes, so the Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Commons Speaker, is admitting that some MPs might end their face-to-face meetings with their constituents. With what's happened, obviously, Jo Cox was killed 5 years ago, murdered by a far-right person.
In her surgery, though.
No, and Sir David Amess was murdered in October, which seems so close, so recent, so much has happened, but by Islamic extremists. But the way that he's talking about it, first of all, he's quite funny, and he doesn't mean to be, but he can't help but keep on saying, I'm still going to be seeing my people face to face. He's sort of saying, everybody else, he says it like twice in this interview, like, some people are going to be using Zoom and some people are going to be, but I'm still going to meet my constituents. And then he says on the day of the murder, he's like, after the murder, and I went in and I still saw my constituents. So he's very keen to prove that he's still going to do it.
Is it not possible, though, for them to install some fairly basic security? I mean, there are schools now that you have to walk through a metal detector to make sure you're not carrying a knife.
Of course, it is.
Straightforward to do that, wouldn't it?
But
it's a shame.
Yeah,
it's not.
But
doesn't mean that we.
But the other thing is that he's also, when he framed it at the time, and he still seems to be framing it like this, where he's talking about having an end to hatred against MPs and a kind of form of political discourse. It was a terrorist. It was a terrorist. You're not going to get that from a
time they tried to make out it was all about social media.
Yeah, and all of that stuff. It's like
everyone has an agenda. They immediately try and harness these things.
When I met with my representative in Tower Hamlets a few years ago, before any of this, of course, occurred, she had quite a lot of security around her at the meeting, and I was surprised to find out that not all of them do. You would think.
I think Amess lived in what was regarded as a fairly sleepy constituency. Tower Hamlets is obviously fairly urban. There's a slightly different vibe. I have no idea what it would be like. My folks live up in Norfolk, and the last time I had lunch with my dad, they have a sort of lunch club, and they were the MP, was coming along. I didn't see him, but he was coming along later that afternoon. They just all sort of drop in, and they're quite chummy, and
no security with him.
No security at all. It's just like a bunch of farmers and stuff.
That's unnerving, I think. Well, you never know.
But that's a different vibe, isn't it, in different parts of the country? And I think a lot of people regard their MP and their access to their MP as emblematic of the culture, of the local culture of the community they represent.
But access doesn't mean you can't have security around you.
No, it doesn't. Absolutely. I think it would make sense to have metal detectors on the door in. I mean, honestly, you often feel that there's too much security in some places and not enough in other places, and it would be really good to just take a step back and just think, okay, what are the likelihood of a certain person? Well, pretty high actually now. So. Let's do that, but maybe we could just remove somebody from the front desk at the National Gallery or something. That getting into is like trying to get out of Soviet Russia. J.K. Rowling, this is our last story before the break, has gone out for some time. She's gone out for some lunch, and it seems to have annoyed people.
It's in the Times. She had lunch with Maya Forstater, who she supported in 2009 with a hashtag that kind of set her.
2019.
I'm sorry, you're right. I'm reading it too, and I said that. You're right, 2019, and it set her off on a sort of a journey that she's, really involved in now. And I do wonder why she did it. J.K. Rowling, if you remember, did a hashtag I stand with Maya, and Maya Forstater is someone who made some comments at her work in support of the idea that you cannot change your sex.
Biological sex.
Exactly. And then she also, I was reading about the case, she did also hand out a pamphlet or two in support of her own beliefs at work. And she thinks she lost the position she had within the funding for the company she was working with. They told her that her work had been too narrow. And she said, no, the reason I was fired is because of my beliefs in the situation. She created a sort of a feeling of unsafeness at work.
But what about the lunch, though? That was like 3 years ago.
It was, and they hadn't met, and she'd planned something for Christmas that it hadn't happened. J.K. Rowling, so finally they had lunch this Sunday in Richmond.
But it's just two people, just two friends.
No, it was a bunch of people.
There were other people there. Catherine Stock was there.
So this is the one that Suzanne
Moore
was at, as well.
Basically, a bunch of leftist feminists and lesbians.
I don't know that they...
for women's rights who have had lunch, meeting up with each other, and the internet, particularly Twitter, has gone totally berserk. They put these photos up, and first of all, the abuse they got, just utterly misogynistic.
So
all about
these are just selfish from the
so all of these trans activists...
Like the kind of stuff you're saying, the abuse right now, is that what you mean? You call them lesbians and left-wing? You don't know their politics at all.
Well, I do know their politics, because I know all of those people very well, and I know exactly what they stand for. And the point is that how is it abusive calling someone left-wing and a lesbian?
No,
that's a statement of fact. My point is...
Susan Moore's not a lesbian.
I didn't say, but she is left-wing. And that's not a bad thing. What I'm saying is that they're being attacked like they're like the most evil human beings ever. And the way they're being attacked is by their looks and the misogyny that's being outpoured by these trans activists.
They've had that.
It's disgusting. We had a comic called Rosie Jones, I don't know if you know, it's a very funny comic, and she said she sees this photo and she was like, oh, it just makes me angry crying about these photos and stuff. When I saw that photo of those women.
Who said that?
There's Rosie Jones. She's a comic. She's sort of newish.
I know her, yeah.
She said, oh my God, it just made me, I was crying when I saw this photo. It makes me so angry. When I saw that photo, I felt gratitude, because those women, the stand that they have taken over the last few years, at great personal risk, rape threats, death threats, losing their jobs, they have woken up me and many other people to what has been going on and the dangers of the trans movement against women's rights.
But do you not think that, I mean, I saw this story bubbling, and I may have missed some of the abuse they got from the trans people, but the main thing I got was that there was some suggestion that this was what women do and how they triumph. They have lunch and they get together and they talk. And then somebody else said, there are people in Somalia dying of starvation. Not all women can afford to have lunch to sort things out.
They were saying, people look at those iPhones.
Exactly. It seemed to me the most extraordinary attack. I mean, J.K. Rowling is very nearly a billionaire, and if she isn't, it's because she's given a lot of it away.
She's the only person who's actually made herself out of being a billionaire by donating to charity.
Yeah, she's allowed to have a decent lunch with some friends sometimes, isn't she? It's not quite like David Beckham's son's wedding or something.
Old school misogyny, like you're saying.
It does seem to be, doesn't it? It's extraordinary. Anyway. That is the end of the first half. Time and tide wait for no man, nor does the GBNews advertisements. So watch them absorb their commands by their wares. See you shortly after the break.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. And joining me are Josh Howie and Scott Capurro. Wednesday's Times now. They say adversity will show you who your true friends are. It seems like Putin has a best friend in the Belarusian leader, Josh.
Yeah, so Lukashenko has basically come out and said that those horrific images that we saw last week in Bucha, it was all the fake and it was all made up by the British, basically.
The British?
The British. We are now responsible, supposedly, for creating this fake narrative, and we went in and put the bodies there, and he says he's got all the license plates and the models of cars and the passwords and addresses. And he says, yeah, come and I'll give you all the information. And then he tried to get it like, no, we don't.
I mean, if you were really going tinfoil hat, it's almost quite good news for Britain that we're the ones that have been identified as faking this. It suggests that we are now seen
Actually
as
a threat.
You know, as a threat, as staunch allies of Ukraine, which is what Ukraine have said as well. This seems to stick in the craw of some people, I think.
Well, I think Boris going there was good leadership, and I think that they're intimidated by any Western leaders who are showing up. I mean, it's such a dangerous area.
It was hilarious watching him walk around Kiev just in his suit after there were pictures of him in Liverpool, remember, in like riot gear.
Yeah.
A few months ago with like hard helmet on and visors. It was extraordinarily good PR, wasn't it, walking around Ukraine.
And he looked like he needed to be there. And he looked like he was there, not just in support of the Ukraine, but in support of British people supporting Ukrainians as well, you know.
But the Belarus thing is, they are like, I don't even know if they're helping Russia. They're such a failed state in themselves, aren't they? You know what I mean?
Well, they're the Russia's greatest ally.
Yeah.
Or closest ally.
Closest
not
ally,
greatest.
yeah. And I suppose a pincer movement to some extent.
And I'm sure they're afraid of their own safety. They're as frightened about Russia as they are supportive of them, I think.
Do you think so?
I'm sure they are. I mean, you know, he's made it very clear that he doesn't want to stop. And anyone who opposes him is a target. And they can't afford to defend themselves against Russia. I mean, the Belarusians are seeing what's happening in the Ukraine. I'm sure they're quite alarmed by it.
Wednesday's Independent now. This sounds like a family you wouldn't want to get into a barroom brawl with, Scott.
Oh, right. Well, these people, they're being labeled as Irish drug runners. They are drug enterprisers worth over €1 billion.
Drug enterprises.
That's what one of the newspapers called them. And it appears as though they're one of the most powerful drug families in the world. And one of the members poses himself as being a boxing aficionado and a promoter of boxing events. He wants to be seen seriously as that.
Yeah.
And he was arrested in Spain not too long ago. And the families seem to travel between Ireland and Spain. And they're in conflict with another family called Hutch, the Hutch gang.
Okay.
Who do the same.
Yeah.
And so the amount of violence that's been displayed by those two families in the last few years, 18 people have died. The amount of money that's being spent protecting themselves and ripping off other people. It's come to the attention of the U.S. government, who stepped in to try to help Ireland deal with this problem.
Oh, that's quite impressive.
So, well, they've said that they've put out a $5 million reward for information on these Irish people, the Kinahan family, and some of them are not.
And we're talking about, what, cocaine, are we? Is it the standard sort of
other
thing?
things too, I think, cocaine as well. Christy Kinahan, Daniel Kinahan, who's wants to be seen as a boxing promoter, and Christy Kinahan Jr. Christy, by the way, is a guy. And they're the heads of this criminal network, and they're trying to find them. And there any hints as to where they are. Although I can't imagine giving a hint about where they are.
Well, you want to make it a decisive hint, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You wouldn't, you draw your sword against
anonymous,
the
obviously,
clan, you've got to throw away the scabbard.
I mean, I was reading this and sort of thinking, yeah, these guys are real baddies. Of those 80 people, 2 of them were just innocent bystanders. Not that it's right that the other 60 people got murdered. But I just still don't understand exactly why the US has got involved. I know Biden thinks he's Irish.
Yeah, he really does.
But I think maybe this is taking it too far.
Maybe they've got a pitch in for Netflix as sort of Peaky Blinders.
It must have something to do with the fact that they're supposed to be, their address is in the UAE. So I wonder if there's some sort of connection there too.
That's part of the new triangle, is it? The UAE?
Is. I guess so. And I think somehow the drugs come in through there and get to other
I still
places.
remember the old days of the Vieux port at Marseille. Those were the days.
Yeah.
Maybe they just want them to pay taxes for
But this is the funny thing. The Garda commissioner says, he said they can run, but they can't hide from justice forever, adding that eventually they're going to run out of money. And then it's second thought, and they've got $1 billion. They might be all right for a little bit.
One thing drug runners very rarely run out of is money. Wednesday's Times, it seems as though our AI overlords are going to be reigning over us sooner than we think, John.
So, yeah, this is actually in Malaysia. And it's been trialled in a couple of the provinces there, a couple of the states in Malaysia.
Yeah.
They have used this AI to sentence rapists and drug dealers. Supposedly they're using that because they've got the most information about those 2 particular crimes.
When you say AI, what do you mean, like a glorified calculator, really, though?
Yeah, they've basically put all the inputs in, and then something they've sort of then it'll come out with a sentence. The judge can then choose.
So they use all the metrics that a judge would normally use, do they?
Yeah, I guess so. They've said they've tried to make it like without racial bias and trying to account for these things, but at the same time, there's some very weird questions here. Like supposedly, the victim is asked, have they suffered psychological distress from being raped? Like it's a yes or no answer. It's like, I don't even know why.
That's mainly going to be a yes.
Yeah, I don't even know why.
It's an interesting thing, though, when these things come in. I remember reading years ago that it was demonstrated that most firms have a more successful hiring policy if they make they call it AI. It is really just a computer. It's not that complex. It's not like playing chess. But
more an algorithm.
Yeah, an algorithm which assesses candidates rather than having the interview stage, which all the old-fashioned bosses think, I need to meet the person to see whether they're going to fit in here. In fact, they don't need to do that. In reality, that is almost always where the mistakes come in because they think, I don't know, I didn't like him. And it's like, it reminds you of your son-in-law that has annoyed you or something, or you have some bias which you're not even aware of. And these algorithms eliminate that. I think there's something to it.
And I think that's what they're hoping. It also speeds things along. But I remember watching that documentary on Netflix about the McCanns and the police, the head policeman who was doing the thing in Portugal was saying, I could see in her eyes that she had done this.
Right.
And it was that kind of thing where you think, well, they read all these messages and things in people's faces and their eyes, all this body language is completely inaccurate. Often.
And they use words like nuance or judgment or,
gut feelings.
Judges like to think that it's not purely a science, that there's an element of art to it, but the art leads them astray, I think.
Well, the interesting thing was that there are other countries that are already doing this. Estonia has doing small claims, but also
Estonia
and China, they've had 3.1 million cases being done by an AI judge they call it like the internet court, and it's all small claims, copyright stuff.
I suppose it's small claim stuff, maybe it's good.
Well, that makes sense, but I think possibly with the larger cases as well, you never know. Well, it might be possible for them to dispassionately assess a murder at some point, just based on the evidence. Well, we have juries, of course, for that.
It seems to be they're pretty well trained for it. I mean, I think if you're going to change someone's life in the long run, like really change it, everyone should be in court.
I presume this is a tool given to the judge.
It's given to the judge, and they can choose whether they're going to do it or not. Yeah.
Well, it's the path we're on, I think. Teachers and porn next. This is from Wednesday's Guardian, Scott.
Well, the National Education Union is going to explore dehumanizing impacts and the prevalence of material that shows the humiliation of women that their students are exposed to. Apparently, there's a prevalence of pornography within the educational system that teachers are very frightened about.
Prevalence among the
pupils. Kids have prepubescent and pubescent have an incredible access.
Well, anyone who has a smartphone now can see whatever they want.
And they're saying that about 90% of girls and 50% of boys have reported that.
Sorry, how many of which?
90% of girls and 50% of boys in 2021 to Ofsted reported that they either they or their peers had been sent explicit pictures they did not wish to see a lot or sometimes. And I think teachers have they don't feel like they can control it. It's just
But the words there are, they did not wish to see it. It's interesting that 50% of boys were pretty happy.
Yeah,
being
probably
sent
got
that
some of the
stuff,
same
right?
amount.
Yeah.
It may be the boys are studying more than girls, obviously, but also I think teachers just want a bit of assistance with this.
Yeah.
And absolutely. And this is, they get to them at that age, 11, 12. Explain. I mean, I sat my son down. He's not doing any of that stuff yet, as far as I know. He's not gone through puberty, but I sat him down. I said, look, mate, you're going to see some stuff, friends, whatever it is, it's not real. And you've got to understand that before the get-go.
Yeah.
And that they need someone, and they're not everybody's going to be as amazing a parent as I am.
But initially,
they need someone in schools
I think the thing is,
say
it's
that.
fine. It's a good thing to tell your kids, but I think the way they use, I suspect the way they use pornography, 13, 14, going through puberty, just out the other side, is more like as a sort of playground weapon. The idea of sending somebody,
No, but I think they are having access to this stuff, and it's very adult, and there's physical violence and whatever, and it's teaching them, as in their sexually formative years, this is what sex is, and then they go out, and when they start becoming sexually active themselves, they mimic it. And
that's an issue, but it sounds like on this occasion what we're talking about is a slightly different issue, which is that kids will use shocking images in order to get a reaction from them.
Well, the word that they're seeing a lot of violence against women and dehumanizing women in this porn. So I think the conference itself is just going to try to come up with some sort of statement that they can tell, like you're saying, to parents and to families how to deal with something like this.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a big part of it is having parents, though, that are willing to have pretty much any conversation that might come up, and it can take a certain amount of...
you don't have to show them the stuff. You just have to make them aware, look, mate, this is just that you're going to see some stuff, and you've just got to be aware about, even if it's meant to look real, it's not, and all the, they need to be educated ahead of the fact. So I did it when I was about 4.
Part 2 is at an end. I know we say this every night, but part 3 stories are even more ridiculous than normal. Disobedient autonomous cars, the worst babysitter in the world, and a whole lot of Viagra. See you in part 3.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to part 3 of Headliners with Josh Howie and Scott Capurro. A video has gone viral of an autonomous car utterly disrespecting the police. This is in Wednesday's Times, Scott.
In San Francisco, a police officer pulled a car over because they didn't have his headlights on.
Right.
And he went to the window and tapped on it, tried to get in, realized there was no one in the car.
Scary.
Yeah. When you're in San Francisco, you see a lot of these cars driving around. They're yeah, I thought they were Jaguars, but again, they're that too, but Chevrolet Bolts as well. And they're, again, driverless cars, driverless taxis, but they're also taking photos constantly of the area for Google and all sorts of other services.
So there might not be anyone in there, no passengers in the back, nothing at all.
And if you see someone in there, they might not be driving. Oftentimes their hands are not on the wheel.
I think we may have a clip. Do we have a clip?
Of the police officer himself.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah. And you can hear someone yelling out, "This is crazy, there's no one in the car."
The thing is, I feel really sorry for that police officer because you could tell he was really looking forward to beating somebody up.
He really was, or shooting someone.
Yeah, just like he could. He's like, "Oh, what? There's nobody here."
It's in a very quiet. I know the neighbour in Clement Street.
Yeah, look, it's running away.
It drives off, but then it pulls over. You'll see, and its hazard lights
get scared. It's like, wait a minute, he needs to rethink his position.
It is like something out of Candid Camera, isn't it?
It's very strange.
But that company is worth $30 billion. The company that
the manufacturer.
The manufacturer, and they said that they're going to set a new standard in safety once they figure out how to tell them.
What are they called?
Well, they're
Bolt?
They're called no. Bolt is the name of the car.
Oh,
they're called
Cruise.
Yeah.
Wow.
And again, I think that'll be everyone. I mean, we'll all be in driverless cars within 5 years.
Well, I kind of hope so, to be honest. Having taken my daughter out for driving lessons this week, it's one of the most
Will you be all right
extraordinarily
in a car
nerve-wracking.
where you're not?
Sorry?
You'll feel safe in a car that you're not driving.
Driverless car, yeah, I would do. Yeah, again, it's very similar to the AI algorithms that hire people. I know it sounds a bit counterintuitive,
You're just
but
so
actually
excited about this, aren't you?
The humans are incredibly...
You don't want to do anything.
Humans are error-ridden.
We're very
We don't want to hire anybody.
Broken.
You don't want to drive. You don't want to be judged in a court of
You two
law.
are going to be replaced by a couple of extraordinarily
I
pliant...
already have.
Sex bots. The yearly Daily Mail outrage generator is the Turner Prize, Josh, and I think this year I have to agree with the outrage, I have to say.
Oh, well, you don't agree? You don't like
well,
the
you've
artwork?
seen that thing in Trafalgar Square? That's
the whipped cream. I think we have a photo of that as well. It's basically on the plinth. There's a whipped cream and there's a fly on it.
Got a fly and a drone on it.
I don't know what that... I mean, the drone is what ruins it for me. I like the fly, I like the cherry, but just having this kind of drone, that for me doesn't make sense.
In principle, we used to go to... There it is. We used to go to sculpture parks and see that kind of outdoor stuff. And in principle, I used to think it was a great idea. And I realised just after a while it just isn't. They never work outdoors. They're great in the first week, and then there's a bit of rain and a bit of bird droppings on them. And they just look scuffed and a bit sad after a while. And you just think, who left that out? In an art gallery, I'm sure it might have been a completely different thing, but there is a reason why bronze and stone have stood the test of time as outdoor statuary.
Well, it's I just like reading these articles. I always like how the artists sort of describe their work. And this was all about, it's a quantum thought experiment, that one.
No. That one, the one we just saw was?
That's someone else's work. Their work realises fictional narratives to describe lived realities of desire, identification and consciousness. And that's what I thought when I saw it. As soon as I saw it, I was like, you know what, this work realises fictional narratives to describe lived realities of desire, identification, consciousness. So it's like, it literally read my mind. It's amazing.
They travel the length and breadth of the country, taking advantage of the easing of lockdown to enjoy the explosion of creativity.
Is that her there? I guess it is.
It's big. It's
I mean, those are better. If I saw those in a market square where there are market and a history of... Those are all right.
OK, like, you mean like to buy them?
Yeah, I'd like to give them a squeeze. No, I mean as a celebration of a culture or something. This is a place where fruit and veg have been sold for years.
Well, it's like
a celebration of
international
fruit and veg. It's lovely.
It's like stand-up, though.
That thing
you can't say that it's bad. It's art. It already is art. It just doesn't appeal to you. That's
not true. I refuse to accept that. There are objective standards of beauty and truth and achievement in art, and we knew that. We knew that for centuries. And then
but not all art is beautiful either, though.
Marcel Duchamp presents a urinal at an art gallery for like a joke, and the next 100 years have just been footnotes to that. Can we get back to making things that are nice to stare at, nicer than a lump of dog poo?
But if you go to Norfolk, which you brought up earlier, people are very proud to tell you that the public urinal was invented there. It's a big part of their lives. So maybe they would find it beautiful to see that in our gallery. They'd feel stimulated and inspired in some way.
Are you telling me that the urinal was invented in Norfolk? That's not true.
It is true.
The urinal is like a universal.
The British urinal, the way that's portrayed here in this country, was invented in Norfolk.
OK. Not Marcel Duchamp's fountain.
I did a documentary. I know my urinal.
I do not like the way
did a documentary about
we're going here. Patriarchy strikes again, this time in the form of 19th century oil painting Scots. There's this wonderful second story to support my
Such
aesthetic.
a beautiful painting, this Manet. The male gaze in a Manet masterpiece has been highlighted by their cultural gallery after curators feel like it might be a misogynistic description of the art itself.
Yeah.
We've had the painting, maybe. Everyone's seen it. It's a barmaid who's staring right in front of her, and you can see the man behind her in the reflection in the mirror looking at her.
Yeah.
And you're more drawn to her because she's on the center of the painting.
Whoa, she's fit!
Yeah, she is.
It's quite a funny picture because it's an odd angle. I think that's what it's more famous for, you know. Yeah.
It feels like you're behind his eyes looking at her.
Yeah.
And if you notice that the painter's hidden her cleavage with a bouquet of flowers.
Tasteful.
It's very tasteful.
CIA.
It was in a venue where ladies of the night kind of displayed their wares. So you're wondering, what is actually her role? What is he actually saying to her? And the gallery itself worries that by calling it the male gaze, it focuses you on him and not her. Yeah. And they want the focus to be on her, although it's up to really the viewer where they put their focus.
But I always looked at that picture, and I always thought it was reminded me of working in a bar and how you just hear the same boring stuff from people.
It's like one of those pictures they use on the internet when to illustrate a story in which a man is being boorish, isn't it? Like mansplaining. You remember there's that one where the old fellow's leaning over the girl's shoulder on the train.
But the gallery is spending $57 million to refurbish the description of their paintings.
Wow.
$57 million. I would have done it for $10.
On the description?
Well, it says a refurbishment on the labeling of all its paintings. A 3-year project that's costing $57 million. And there's another painting of Monet's that's very famous too, called Olympia. You may have seen it. It's a lady in bed, practically naked, to hear this, and her, I guess at the time, her servant standing behind her.
Watershed.
And they worry that the painting itself kind of overshadows the importance of the black lady in that art. And she kind of sidelines her, they say. Mm-hmm. And they want to find a way to describe it so that person, that painting, is not sidelined.
Do you know what I would do in this? I do think that notes they put next to paintings in galleries are important, and there's been a lot of talk recently about them trying to reinvent, for a woke generation. There was a Hogarth exhibition, I think, in which all the cartoons were discussed in terms of the imperial source of the wood that made the chair that the old woman was falling off in her gin stupor. I think they should crowdsource this stuff. If you ever go into Waterstone's bookshop, for instance, there's like shelf after shelf of books, and the people who work there.
Well, those are the best bits.
They're fantastic. It's so interesting. They're meaningful. Somebody has read the book and had an honest reaction, has written a note, and you can ignore it, but it's useful and it's a personal.
It would be good to get different perspectives.
Yeah, like you can have half a dozen.
You can have the colonial perspective, and you can have those different things, and then see which one you kind of agree with.
Anytime you go to the National Gallery, you pick up a postcard at the end and you write down your thoughts on a painting that struck you, and I think
you're onto a winner.
The gallery is also worried about. They were talking about Gauguin.
Schools could do it.
Well, they're worried about. It's interesting you said because they're worried about Gauguin's works being interpreted in a way where people don't notice that he's taking advantage of his position as a colonizer. But when I was studying in art school, when I was 18, they were telling us all this stuff.
Yeah, it's not new.
You can't miss it looking at the art.
No,
you see it right there.
It's very clear. Yeah, we aren't one for trigger warnings here at Great British News, but this one is grim, Josh.
This is the grimmest story I think I've done.
I love this story.
Here, this. I was reading the story, just being like, ah!
It's so sweet, this story.
There's a body snatcher in Russia. I say, thank God he's in Russia. They're talking about letting him out because he had mummified remains.
So it's a body snatcher. Can we define that?
So he'd stolen these children's bodies, girls' bodies, from 3 to 12 or something like that, like 29 girls in total, stolen them from graves and had sort of mummified them and made them into these dolls. It's really...
Mittens on them, they were cold.
Yeah.
So this is, presumably, he gets these bodies fresh, pretty fresh.
I guess so. And then...
You can't mummify after...
They look pretty... I saw the photos. They look pretty good.
You saw... I couldn't look at the photos. I'm a bit of a wimp like this stuff. But basically they're talking about letting him out to friends or relatives. I'm thinking, how good a friend do you have to be to take this guy? He didn't murder anybody, but I mean, this is some freaky,
it's just creepy.
Horrible
He put lipstick on them, and he laid them in a position that he could...
Gave them birthday parties.
Yeah, little parties. And he laid next to them, and he chatted with them, and put socks
Did
and
Dennis
hats.
Nielsen do that with his victims? You have them sat next to him on the couch watching TV shows with him? He had actually killed them.
I've never...
Dahmer did.
I've never been one of those people who's into...
Dahmer, it might have been Dahmer, yeah.
He kept company.
Yeah.
They're lonely, these people. That's why they do it.
Yeah, but he lives with it. His mum said, we saw these dolls, but did not suspect there were dead bodies
He's
inside.
that close away from the Turner Prize. Telegraph now, social media may be a suicide factor.
Spray some whipped cream on them with a cherry on top, and he'll win. Yes, apparently Sajid Javid is very worried, the health secretary, about apparently there's been a there hasn't been. There's been no spike in suicides. And in fact, I looked it up, the suicide rate in 2020 was lower than 2019. But he's concerned about the bullying, about the way people are attacking one another online, and he's just concerned that that is leading to people committing suicide in this country.
Yeah.
I mean, Britain's still very low on the suicide rate compared to other countries. South Korea being very high, Lesotho being high, the US being high. But he's concerned with what he's seeing. Especially, particularly the suicide rate among men, particularly men between 45 and 49, where the suicide rate is highest in this country.
3/4 of men, people who commit suicide are men, which is...
Yes, more women attempt it, apparently, but they fail.
More free, be a better shot.
Avoid doing some jokes now.
I do agree with you that even though the suicide rate is low, and we always say it's the biggest killer of men under 50, and that represents the extraordinary improvements in health that we have. There's virtually nothing else now that threatens young men under 50. But you do have to be very careful and data-driven, I think, with these things, because there is a tendency with social media. People just think, oh, it must be causing suicide. It must be making people depressed, because it's very easy when you see members of your family endlessly checking their phone to think, that is driving me insane. It must be driving them insane.
Well, some of it is people gambling online and losing all their money.
Of course, that's gambling.
And then they say, oh, they kill themselves online because of social media. Well, actually, it's because they have a gambling.
Well, exactly. I mean, my daughter, for instance, 17 years old, she's got Instagram and everything, and I think, oh, God, I've got to be careful. She's got body image problems. It's very supportive. All her friends kind of go, oh, you look gorgeous, babe. There's this constant web of interconnected...
And I'm always concerned when the government wants to kind of take control of the internet, and I'm always worried if what they're really after is censoring what
I absolutely agree. We saw that with the Amos thing, of course. Let's be having ya is not a phrase. Delia Smith is hearing from publishers regarding her new book, Josh.
This is unbelievable. Yeah, in The Guardian, she wants to publish a book. She was rejected by 6 publishers. She's written a book about spirituality, and she sold 21 million cookbooks, and now she wants to sort of pivot. But really, she's sort of going up the sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So she's dealt with the bottom level, and now she wants to go straight to the top of the pyramid.
The top is spirituality.
Spirituality, and sense of belonging and all that stuff. So, but how risk-averse is publishing at the moment if they're not going to publish someone who sold 21 million
Well, maybe
books?
they know that, maybe they can see that she'll be seen as a fraud.
Well, maybe, I mean, how many people out there are...
It might hit the sales that they already have ticking over for her cookbook.
I'm sure that there are some people who would buy it out of interest.
Remember when Arthur Conan Doyle developed a keen interest in spirituality, partly because his son was killed in the First World War, but it was a...
and he was a hallucinogen.
Yeah, I think he went a bit crazy, but he was absolutely adamant towards the end of his life that Sherlock Holmes had not been a significant contribution to world culture, that his important work would come to be seen as his exploration of the veil.
I mean, I interviewed Vivienne Westwood once, and she wanted to talk about her manifesto. And the audience wanted to hear about the shoes.
Yeah. People never know what they're famous for, do they? More egg recipes, Delia. On to a story that is dear to your heart, Scott. This is Brazilians and Viagra.
Well, Bolsonaro faces stiff questioning over Brazil's...
Hey, Guardian, well done.
The Brazilian Army's Viagra purchase. Apparently, the Brazilian Army is purchasing over 30,000 pills, 30,000 Viagra, and they're claiming that it's to treat pulmonary hypertension.
Yeah.
But the Navy...
It was initially developed for, and then it found out that the long-lasting erections were a side effect or something.
That's what I use it for.
Yeah. Sorry, but carry on,
I use it to accompany my weed in Berlin, but anyway, yes.
On the metro.
Yeah, while I'm online cruising. The country's armed forces have been splashing out tens of thousands for impotence pills, and people are wondering why Bolsonaro hasn't stopped this, because he says that my military, the words he uses in Portuguese equal, they're flaccid-proof, and they're unfloppable.
Right.
And he claims that about himself.
He doesn't want to hear that his military require any kind of medical assistance. They are...
Obviously, most of the people taking it are young, and it's a party drug for young people.
I'm just annoyed that they didn't do a pun about attention.
Yeah. Can I ask, I don't know whether they mean it seriously, are you interested in... Is your partner Brazilian or something? Was it? Yeah, your husband. Yeah. Has Brazil become as fascist as everyone expected? Because Bolsonaro, that was some big headlines when he came in, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know about fascist, but he's very controlling. He's a military leader himself. I think he encourages a coup to happen. He's rolled the tanks through Brasilia a couple of times.
Right.
He's a self-described misogynist and homophobe.
Yeah. But is that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, or is that kind of...
No, he has slapped women on camera and told them they were too ugly to molest. So I don't think... There's nothing tongue-in-cheek. I don't think he's smart enough to understand irony, have a sense of humor about himself.
Okay.
And his health is quite poor. So when he brags about being flaccid-proof...
Yeah, he got the coronavirus, didn't he?
He did.
And it hit him harder than Trump.
It really took him down a couple of pegs, too, health-wise. I think that he's concerned about the election which is coming up.
When is that? This year?
It's quite soon, yeah.
Oh, okay,
I
that'll
think
be
he's
interesting.
worried. Although there's very little opposition, unfortunately, in the left to him, kind of like this country.
Yeah.
Speaking of flaccid, the left is just useless there.
There is a country that I think could do with some environmental support. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sting was correct, wasn't he? Well, that's all we have time for.
That's it?
Thank you to my guests, Josh Howie and Scott Capurro. Dominic Frisby's in the hot seat tomorrow. He's joined by Leo Kirsten, Diane Spencer. I've been Simon Evans. I will see you back here on Thursday. Thank you very much. Good night.
What about the fish wars? The fish...
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here.
Joe Biden walking out.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Tonight on Farage, a criminal sanction against the serving Prime Minister. It's never ever happened before. Will he still be there at Christmas? We'll discuss. In Donbass, a major Russian offensive is about to begin before the key date of May the 9th. We'll explain why tonight on this programme. And joining me for Talking Pints, Mark Johnson, MBE, somebody who had fallen on very tough times, been to prison, and is now running a charity to try and help people get back on track. Before that, let's get the news.
You're watching Polly Middlehurst with the very latest news. And as Nigel was saying, our top story tonight, the Prime Minister and his wife have paid their fines for breaching lockdown rules and offered a full apology. Police say the fixed penalty notices related to a gathering in the Cabinet Room at number 10 on Boris Johnson's birthday in June 2020. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, will also be fined over lockdown breaches at Downing Street and Whitehall. Boris Johnson says he will not resign, though, over the revelations, instead vowing to focus on the job at hand.
Today, I've received a fixed penalty notice from the Metropolitan Police relating to an event in Downing Street on the 19th of June 2020. And let me say immediately that I've paid the fine and I once again offer a full apology. And in a spirit of openness and humility, I want to be completely clear about what happened on that date. My day began shortly after 7 a.m. and I chaired 8 meetings in number 10, including the Cabinet Committee deciding COVID strategy. I visited a school in Hemel Hempstead, which took me out of Downing Street for over 4 hours. And amongst all these engagements, on a day that happened to be my birthday, there was a brief gathering in the Cabinet Room shortly after 2 p.m, lasting for less than 10 minutes, during which people I work with kindly passed on their good wishes. And I have to say, in all frankness, at that time, it did not occur to me that this might have been a breach of the rules. But of course, the police have found otherwise, and I fully respect the outcome of their investigation. I understand the anger that many will feel that I myself fell short when it came to observing the very rules which the government I lead had introduced to protect the public. And I accept in all sincerity that people had the right to expect better. And now I feel an even greater sense of obligation to deliver on the priorities of the British people, strengthening our economy, creating jobs and opportunities, levelling up across the whole of the United Kingdom. Now, of course, ensuring that Putin fails in Ukraine and easing the burden on hard-working families caused by higher energy prices. I will take that forward, that task, with due humility, but with maximum determination to fulfil my duty and do what is best for the country I serve. Thanks very much.
Minister explaining why he paid his lockdown fine. Now, in the United States, police in New York are searching for a gunman who threw down a smoke bomb and opened fire in a crowded subway carriage, injuring 16 people, and a warning: the following TV pictures may upset you. Officials say 10 people were shot in the incident, which happened during the morning commute at the 36th Street station at Sunset Park in Brooklyn in New York. The whereabouts of the perpetrator, as we said, still unknown, said to be a black male, and police say it's currently not being treated as a terrorist event, but the motive still unclear. The governor of New York saying gun violence, though, has to end.
We say no more.